Hi, today you find me in my greenhouse and I am going to be potting up the seedlings that I planted in February and earlier on in March. I've had to take a break previously, so they were left alone, unattended, in the dark or with minimal light and with minimal water, so they're not doing great. So we need to see what can be salvaged, see what can be moved on, and see what I need to replant in order to get my spring cutting garden up and running. So if you want to tag along, stay tuned. So these are the seeds that I planted out in February and March. As you can see, some have fared better than others. Let's focus in on the obvious. These are Cerinthe Major. They obviously needed a lot more light than I was giving them. As I said, unfortunately I had to be away for ended up being 10 days. My husband was supposed to be looking out for these, but I think he left them in the room with the curtains closed and no watering. So these are the results. So really, I mean, at worst I'm starting from scratch again. So all of my work for February and March has come to nothing. At best, they will survive. So certainly for the Cerinthe, I am going to try and plant them out deeper. Now they're a hardy plant, so I am going to experiment with planting them out deep into the compost bed where I want them to grow now. You know, they will either die or they will survive. We shall see. But at the moment, there's not much that I can do with them as they are. I'm also going to be going away again for another two week stint. So I need to make sure that my plants have enough of a chance to survive the coming season, the time that I'm away where I can't monitor them. So I need to give them enough soil and be able to either give them enough moisture or be or be outside so that the rain can water them, because we're getting enough of that at the moment. So that's where I am. So I'm just trying to see what I can salvage. Now, the Scabiosa in the back, they're doing pretty well. They haven't produced their second leaf, so I am going to leave them because they can probably survive in that tray. It's deep enough for them to survive as it stands for several weeks yet. So they will continue. The Verbascum is not looking great, although there is something there. However, this same seedling appears in the next pot, which is artichokes, which I believe this is an artichoke. So these seedlings here look very similar to the seedlings here and in this Scabiosa ping pong seedlings. So I don't know whether things have spread, and in fact they also appear here in the Cerinthe. So it seems strange that all 4 of those pots have a very similar seedling growing in it. Now it could be that I was liberal with a seed that I wasn't aware of, or there could be a weed within the compost itself. I don't know, but until it starts producing another set of leaf, then I can't do anything. They're not the healthiest looking, so I'm not too concerned at the moment. What I will do is just plant some more seeds in each of these to redo it, because the compost has hardly been used for that amount of seed. So I'm just going to reseed them up again and give them a good water. So then we come to the seed blocking. Now I am hopeful that each of those little blocks as you can see there, can just be individually lifted and potted up into a bigger seed tray. So where there are plants, I will add them into a tray. And these are the trays that I'm going to be using. So I've got various trays. They have been soaking in a water bath for half an hour. In fact, there's still some soaking out there. Just so that the soil is damp and good for the seeds to go into, and welcoming for the seeds to go into. And I will prick them out and put them in there directly. So as I say, to cater for my specific set of circumstances that I've got, I'm going to plant out outside as many feasible hardy plants that I've got on the go. If they're not hardy, then I won't be planting them out. I haven't looked through and checked to see which ones are hardy and which ones aren't. But if there are any, I will be planting them out because they've got more chance of getting the right amount of water and the right amount of light to be able to balance that out for when I'm not going to be here. And I can cover them with a bit of frost protection if there's going to be a frost. And hopefully, fingers crossed, my husband will do that if that's the case, rather than relying on him to water daily or twice, every other day. So it'll be easier for him to do the frost protection than the watering, I'm hoping. But, if I don't do it, they may die anyway. So we're going to go with it. So there's going to be at least two types of potting on. I'm going to be potting on into the trays that I've just shown you, potting on into the compost outside, and if there is enough plants to spare, I might prick out and pot onto the bigger seed blocks, but there may not be enough seeds to try out both sets of experiments. And as my main issue is going to be watering, I need to make sure that there is enough compost available to be able to store as much water as possible for the longest amount of time. And I kind of feel that soil blocks may not be the best for that. It's fine if you're there and you can go in every day and just see whether they need watering, but not if you need to leave them for a bit. So I kind of think my preferred options are going to be the seed tray and outside and fend for themselves and just see what happens. And then if there's enough left, I will do the seed blocking. The reason I can have these choices for my cutting garden is because I'm only growing flowers for me. If I have got any spare, I give them out, but they're just for me. So I don't need masses of flowers to sell on and create, 20 bouquets a week. I also was planning to get better at succession sowing this year. And actually, I might have to be doing that given my set of circumstances that I am going to be going backwards and forwards to help my mum and dad out. So succession sowing may be the only way that I will be able to get flowers regularly so that when I am back, I can have flowers ready. So with the, for me, as I said, in my garden and my needs, I don't need many flowers available to make a bouquet. Therefore, I don't need many plants at any one time. Now, to last throughout the season, I need quite a few plants. But as you pick from them, the plants will eventually decide, enough's enough, I've finished. And so you then start on the next set. So to be able to do that, I'm looking at maybe 5 plants tops, and that would give me a couple of weeks worth, and then another 5 plants, and then another 5 plants. So anywhere between 5 and 10 plants per variety is sufficient to keep me going. I'm hoping, when I did the sowing, I was looking at, I've sown about, depending on the variety, I've sown maybe 15 to 20 plants. Therefore, I have given myself a little buffer for things not germinating. I hopefully have then enough to pot on. But as I say, if I only have a few plants, it will be sufficient for me. Even if I just have one, it just gives me a little bit of variety. So I'm hopeful to have a few plants that I can use, but I don't need loads. So that is my goal, to be able to just get something up and running, and then hopefully things will level out with my own personal circumstances, and that will come the summer I'll be back to normal, and hopefully there will be some plants to pick by that point. But that's where we are at the moment. So let me get the soil, the compost blocks ready, and I will show you what I do to prick out and plant on. So I have my potting trays filled with a mixture of potting compost, a bit of coir and a bit of perlite. And I've done that to be able to give it a bit more of a chance to retain water than I normally would. Normally, if I was potting into a tray, it would just be neat potting compost, and that would be sufficient. But because I need to make sure they survive for longer than I would normally have, then I have added the extra perlite and coir to try and retain some of that water. If you can see from these two trays, I'll put them side by side like that. Don't know whether you can see, but this tray here is 2 centimeters at least deeper than this tray. So ideally, I want to be potting them into these trays because there's more soil and they've got more area to grow. However, I've only got 2 of these, so it is what it is. But that would be ideal. And that way, because I plan to plant them out as soon as I possibly can once the frost has cleared, and even before that, if they are looking like strong, healthy plants, and I would plant them out and put a bit of protection over them, then they're not going to be in these trays for very long. So they just need to be in there long enough to get a few leaves. Some of them will require pinching out, so I will do that. But we're looking at maybe being in there for a month. So that should be ample, certainly in the green one, ample space for keeping the plants in for that length of time. Maybe not so much with the black one, but needs must, it's all I've got. So what you can use for pricking out, I have a couple of tools. So one is a dibber. So it's got measurements on. I've had it years. It's relatively cheap. One's a thicker end, one's a thinner end, and you poke it into your soil, wiggle it about to make the hole that you want to plant in. But if you haven't got a dibber, you can make your own with just a pencil. That is sufficient. You don't need any fancy tools to do this. So I have identified some seeds that I want to plant out. So let's go for these. These are straw flowers and limonium. A handy use for my snips. I am going to plant them out, pull them out with these. So they have been well watered. Ooh, they're not so easy as I thought. Once you get started, I'm sure they'll be fine. I'm just going to place them for the time being whilst I get them out. Now actually, so this one has come out quite well, but once it's lifted, so this is really quite dry, it needs to be more moist. So that is one of my problems I'm running into in these pots, that it is just not, I'm just not watering them well enough. So, something to bear in mind for future. So let me, as I say, just place the ones we've got. Oh, nice, a nice chunk. Right, so that's the limonium. Right, now they may be too close together, but that's what I'm going to go with for the time being. Certainly makes it easier, the soil blocks, in potting them up. Although it does seem a bit of a wasted time putting the soil blocks in just to then replant them into a tray. But maybe I'll try again with the soil blocks properly, starting everything off in a bigger soil block the next time. The key is to try and avoid touching the roots and touching the stalk. The leaves are fair game because these are just, they're not true leaves, they're seed leaves. So they just get out there to start photosynthesizing and getting the energy back into the plant. But they haven't, the seed hasn't yet produced its true leaves. So these leaves, if you damage them, it's not the end of the world because they will fall off eventually anyway. However, you do want to be as gentle as possible because you don't want to be damaging the stems and the roots. So then we have those planted. I just need to label them before I lose track of what's happening. There we have the first tray planted up. It was already pre-watered, so that's us good to go. Everything's labelled. I've just reused the labels off the lid. And so, yes, more to do. But everything is now pricked out and put into seed trays. Let me give you a bit of a close-up. Okay, so they all look a little bit better than what they did previously. So we have scabioses, China asters. These are some grasses. I've kept these quite obviously in the seed blocks. I don't know why I decided not to push those in as much, see whether that made any difference. These ones look a little bit worse for wear, so we shall see whether they come up to anything. But the others don't look too bad and seem to have perked up within just half an hour of them being replanted. I have also planted up some spares and the extra long cerinthes in this new compost bed. It's a temporary measure, we'll see how they go. They were extras. There was no way that the cerinthes were going to survive if I just plotted them up in a plant, in a pot, because it really need to be a really deep pot. I did try and plant them deep, although it may not look like it there, but they are really quite deep in. That's how long the stems were. So we shall see. There are a few scabioses in there that were extras. I potted up a lot of the other ones, so they were extras. So I just thought I'd see how it works and how hardy they are. If they die, then so be it, and we'll see what happens. So now everything has been pricked out and potted up. So everything that was sown in February and earlier on in March has now been moved on into an extra potting tray. Hopefully they shall survive. It will be another week, I think, before I need to leave again. So it will give me an idea of whether they've survived the potting on, whether they are going to grow. And in the meantime, I think I need to work out what I've lost and plant out some more. Thanks for watching this far. I hope you found it enjoyable, and I'll be posting more videos of my journey in the cutting garden this season, so you can see how I may not have made it look easy with these particular sowings, but it is easy, and hopefully you can hopefully I've inspired you to get some seeds out and start planting something for yourself.